Yo, what's going on guys, Arekkz here, welcome back to another Monster Hunter World video. Today, I want to talk about monsters. After all, they are a pretty integral part of a game where the main aim is to hunt monsters. So far I've spoken about weapons, armor, the world map, some of these smaller, more subtle gameplay tweaks, how the revised armor skill system might work, and lots of other stuff. Of course, if you've missed any of that, then you can check out the full Monster Hunter World playlist down below. But the one thing I haven't really spoken about is monsters, both big and small. Sure, right now we haven't seen a great deal. We've seen 3 large monsters, Great Jagrest, Anjanath and Rathalos, as well as 3 smaller monsters, Aptonoth, Small Jagrest and Kestodon. And thanks to the Scoutfly tracker, we can also confirm the existence of the Mosswine as well as 2 other smaller monsters. A bug-like creature not too dissimilar to a Vespoid, and also something along the lines of a Remobra. On top of that, some of the new and returning armor sets can help confirm the existence of a few more. So I thought it'd be fun to take a look at all the monsters we know about so far, talk a bit about them, and share some insight where applicable based on previous entries in the series. So, if you do enjoy this, then a like would be super appreciated, and be sure to comment down below and let me know what you guys think. Now, to kick things off, let's start with the poster boy for Monster Hunter, Rathalos. Rathalos has been in Monster Hunter ever since the very beginning. He's like Pikachu for Pokemon. If you ask someone to name a Pokemon, they can typically always name Pikachu. And in Monster Hunter, that's Rathalos. In the Monster Hunter World gameplay, we've seen a fair bit of him. Sure, the hunt invariably never focuses on the beast. Normally, they lure the poor injured Anjanath up to the Rathalos nest so that it can then duke it out Mortal Kombat style. But in the Japanese gameplay, where they showed multiplayer, they did take it on for a bit. Out of the monsters we've seen so far, Rathalos is at the top of the food chain. It trumps Anjanath, and by extension, Great Jagrest. That doesn't mean to say that it is at the very top. I'm sure we will see bigger, more fierce creatures when the game comes out. But based on what we have right now, he's the Kingpin. And that information is stuff that we're going to want to remember in Monster Hunter World, since the monster hierarchy has a definitive impact on gameplay. Learning this food chain when the game comes out means you'll know how to take advantage of those situations where another monster rolls up uninvited. However, speaking more specifically about Rathalos, Rathalos is a fire-breathing wyvern, with a spiny armoured hide that covers a large portion of its body. It has sharp talons, which in previous games allow it to inflict the poison status effect on hunters. They usually dive bomb you from up high, and this attack not only damages you based solely on the impact, but also the toxin thrown on top can be a pretty nasty combination. In fact, if you're already on low health, then this can often be the nail in the coffin for many hunters. On top of that, being a wyvern, Rathalos is no stranger to flying. You can go as far as to say that it's what it enjoys doing the most, much to the frustration of many hunters. In fact, Rathalos is often referred to as the Lord of the Skies. Throughout Monster Hunter history, we've fought many different incarnations of Rathalos, as well as various subspecies, rare species, and deviants. Some are a little more grounded than others, but based on what we've seen of Rathalos in World, he definitely seems to be a fan of remaining airborne. As such, flash bombs, the new stinger ammo, and ranged weapons are more than likely to be very useful for knocking it out of the sky. The long tail is also something you need to keep an eye out for. When grounded, wyverns have a tendency to spin around, swiping hunters with their tails, so good placement and learning to read a monster is a must, as always. Finally, it's worth noting that Rathalos are very territorial creatures, hence why it's so keen to attack Anjanath when it's led to its nest. In previous Monster Hunter titles, if you ever picked up an egg from a Rathalos nest and dropped it, it was an easy way to lure it back, since it doesn't take kindly to you making scrambled egg out of its future heirs to the Sky Throne. Unsure at this stage whether we can do that in World, but it's something to consider. Now moving on from there to one of our new monsters, the Anjanath. Anjanath is a brute wyvern, falling into the same category as the likes of Deviljho, Barroth, Brachydius, and even Glavenus. Much like Rathalos, Anjanath 2 is a fire-type monster. The armor you can craft from it provides you with fire resistance, but in combat, Anjanath is capable of breathing fire on anyone that gets a little too close. In addition to that, it has an incredibly powerful nose, and can use this to track down hunters by smell. Of course, in World you can use things like the Ghillie Mantle to hide yourself from a monster's sight for a period of time, but thanks to its incredible sense of smell, Anjanath can still track you through the map. Now, Enrage, or Rage Mode as it's often known, is something you'll encounter with most monsters. Some are more fierce than others, some are more dangerous than others, and some have more obvious tells. Rathalos has a tendency to be a little more trigger happy on the fireballs when it enrages, meanwhile Anjanath has a very obvious tell. In its base form, Anjanath resembles a T-Rex in form and appearance, but when it becomes enraged, the nostrils flare up and the wings or the fins sprout at the back. They're probably fins. I don't really think it's going to be flying anywhere anytime soon. The technicalities aside, for any of you guys new to the series, these are things you'll want to look out for. Some monsters can be incredibly dangerous when enraged. Take Jagrest, for example. Don't know whether it's returning in World, but as a great example, it's one of my favourite monsters from previous titles. It is already pretty fearsome, but when it enters rage mode, it suddenly starts moving like the Flash. It is fast, powerful, and a recipe for disaster if you don't know what you're doing. So, learning a monster's tells for when it enters this state may well inform the way that you approach it. Remember, the running is always an option. As we've seen from the gameplay, you can also cut the tail off of an Anjanath, which of course offers you another carve, and in terms of the monster food chain, it currently sits in the middle, capable of trouncing a great Jagrest, but definitely no match for the King of the Skies. Then finally, at least for the large monsters that we've seen, we have Great Jagrest. In truth, this is probably the one that we know the least about, since there hasn't been as much focus on fighting this one in the gameplay they've shown. We know it's capable of eating creatures similar in size to it, like the Aptonoth, and in doing so it basically doubles in size. We also know that it regurgitates its food and spits it back out for its young to eat, the Jagrest. Based on the way that it does move, I'd say it's either a Leviathan, similar to that of Royal Ludroth, or an Amphibian, similar to that of Zamtrios, but I'm personally leaning more towards the former. From the Monster Hunter SDCC panel, when they spoke about the design process behind some of the monsters, Great Jagrest is most comparable to an iguana, and they actually studied how reptiles increase in size after eating in order to come up with the idea for this monster. It is, however, a pretty docile creature and won't typically attack you unless provoked, so you can quite happily pass it by without really having to worry about it getting involved in your business. Now, that's it for the large monsters we've currently seen. However, thanks to the weapon videos, we can pretty much confirm that Rathian will also be making a return. For those of you new to the series, Rathalos and Rathian usually come as a pair, Rathalos being the male, Rathian being the female. Rathian is predominantly green in colour and has similar traits to Rathalos. It breathes fire, it can inflict poison from its claws, and it also has a pretty potent poisonous tail, so that is for sure something you need to watch out for. In short, never fight a Rathian without antidotes unless you plan to not get hit. On top of that, thanks to some of the other armour sets, we can potentially begin to build a picture of what other types of monsters we'll be fighting. Take these two blue armour sets, for example. The colour of the monster is quite often reflected in the armour, so we're more than likely looking at two monsters with blue colouring. One of them is most likely a Neoterran or a bug-like creature, meanwhile the other is more than likely some sort of reptile or amphibious creature given the scaly nature of the gear. There's this puffy Lagombi looking gear that is more than likely from a snow-type creature. I mentioned in my armour video the other day that this armour seems to share similarities with the previous baggy or bird wyvern gear, so this could be Monster Hunter World's equivalent to a Jaggy or a baggy. And this armour set here has feathers on it, so it could well be another wyvern bird-like creature, and of course the rest, well, we're just going to have to wait and see. However, it doesn't end there. See, in Monster Hunter you have both big and small monsters. Big monsters are more often than not the focus of your quest or hunt, meanwhile smaller monsters are a necessary farming material to create your overall sets. They don't often pose a great threat to you and aren't difficult to take down, but they are an important part of the ecosystem. We've seen 3 in general gameplay, and as mentioned earlier in the video, the Scoutfly tracker helps to confirm a few more. The Aptonoth is the first one you would have seen, since they like to demonstrate it getting swallowed whole by the Great Jagrest. Aptonoths are herbivores, they typically travel around in packs, often with a younger one in the midst, and more often than not, if you attack one, the others tend to flee. The second monster is the Kestodon. This was seen in passing around the middle of the ancient forest when fighting the Anjanath. These resemble raptors with sort of shiny bald heads. It's a little hard to say exactly how these monsters behave, given that there was a lot of action going on in the gameplay, but if they're anything like Jaggies or other bird wyverns, then they'll likely be a little more hostile. Again, not a great threat, but should you enter the same area, they'll likely focus on you as a pack. And then finally, the Jagrest, the smaller versions of the Great Jagrest. These counterparts are much smaller and slimmer than their bigger brothers. They move quickly, stand up like meerkats to look around, and will eat the regurgitated meat that the Great Jagrest spits out. They can also climb trees and tend to do so if they encounter a larger monster, namely if something like Anjanath enters the area. So they're pretty nimble and good at utilising the environment around them. Outside of that, the remaining small monsters come from the Scoutfly tracker down here. This can be used to track both large and small monsters. As the hunter moves around the map, the tracker updates based on what's in the vicinity. This icon here is the icon for a mosswine. Mosswines are herbivores, again very docile, and only ever attack you if provoked. They look like little pigs with hard skulls, and this moss all over their back. They also have a good appetite for mushrooms, so this is something to keep in mind if you're ever out there on the hunt for a particular type of mushroom. This icon, on the other hand, is for an insect-like creature. The icon is a little different to that which we've seen from previous games, but it'll fall under the same category as, say, Vespoids or Bonabras. Pesky bugs, and they often zap you if they're left unattended, but equally they can also be a pain if you ever need to farm them for parts, because typically when you attack them, they disintegrate. And then finally, this last icon here looks somewhat like a Remobra. Again, different icons, so it could either just be updated graphics or a new species altogether, but these creatures typically hunt in packs and largely remain airborne apart from when they swoop down to attack. But that, my friends, is pretty much it. 3 large monsters sighted, as well as another 6 potentially confirmed from the armor sets alone, so bringing the grand total up to 9 large monsters. And on the small monster front, that brings the current total up to 6. Obviously there will be many more than just the ones counted here, but as and when Capcom begin releasing more videos, trailers, and hopefully demos of different areas, we can continue to count the monsters to kind of begin building a better picture of what we can expect to fight in the final game. If you guys saw anything that you think I might have missed, then by all means share it down below. But for the time being, thank you very much for watching, take it easy, catch you next time, peace out.